most of us mere mortals want a dog that can do a bit of everything. Yeah, that can go beating, and it can do a bit of picking up, and it can be on a peg. I know you said sit on a peg with you then, but we're talking about Cocker Spaniels, aren't we? It could be in the vicinity of the peg with you. That's what I aim for with my dogs. I aim for that versatile gun dog.
Nick, welcome to the show.
Morning, sir. How are we doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Why Cocker Spaniels? They're way harder to train than a Labrador. They're harder to control than a Springer, who generally hunt 90% as well. They're not as steady as either breed, and yet you have several and have championed them for years. Why so?
Well, look, first of all, my first gun dog was a Springer Spaniel, 30 odd years ago, and she did all right. In fact, a kind of funny little story. I used to go beating on Vinnie Jones's dad's estate, Peter Jones, and Peter was quite a firm gamekeeper, should we say? And quite often, "Oh, Meg, where's Meg?" Because that was my Springer Spaniel. So I cut my teeth on the Springers. But Cocker Spaniels, I can remember I was actually doing a photo job. I was photographing a little rough shoot, and this is years ago. And it was a lady gun, and she had a little black and white ticked cocker. And as I'm telling you, I've got the picture in my archive still. And this lady shot a bird, and this little cocker stood up on its back legs like a meerkat. Bang. That was it for me. What a little character. And so our first cocker was a little blue roan dog called Sweep. She was the tiniest little thing. Came from Old Lines, named Carrow Lines, which is down in Devon. Queen Anne legs, all bowed. Would retrieve all day long. Not the best hunter. If it was thick cover, she'd come behind you. She'd rather walk behind you. And that did it for me, really. I love their character. They're all different characters. We've got 5 now, ranging from 14.5 to 2.5. That's the bottom line. I love their characters, and I think that's what I think they're a really versatile little dog. They're not going to be brilliant if you want to go wild fowling or you're going to sit in a cold, wet hide all the time. They're not designed for that. They're just, I don't know. They are addictive, Joe. I don't know what you've got, but if you've only got one, I guarantee you'll be getting another one very soon.
Depends how my wife doesn't listen to this.
They're only small, aren't they? You can always fit another one in.
I was literally telling her this week, I said we wouldn't need to get any new beds because the bed's big enough for another one. I wouldn't need to get any new crates for the car, etc., because they'd all fit in.
Yeah.
She wasn't keen, but I'll work on it.
Send me your email address. I'll drop her a few lines. Yeah, all ours live indoors as well, Joe. So I couldn't have 5 Springers living indoors. I couldn't have 5 Labradors living indoors. And I think they're just great family pets. The unfortunate thing is, in truth, they've become so popular. I do lessons. I do one-to-one lessons and group lessons. Probably 95% of my clients have cockers. And the biggest thing I think you have to do with these little dogs is make yourself the most important thing in the world. More important than all the hedges or the fields, everything. And that's probably the failing of a lot of people that to get these little dogs. They've got to do something. You've got to mentally train them, but also mentally just keep them going. Because you will end up with a nightmare.
I've got a bit of a theory that Cocker Spaniels are the Land Rovers of the automobile world, because they have people who are just immensely you see? Hold on.
I'm a fan of Land Rovers. I must admit. Now we're beginning to talk.
Well, you see, if I peek my head out of my window, I can see both of my Land Rovers on the driveway. So I'm thinking a bit of a theme here. Okay, so Land Rovers are not as reliable as other 4-wheel drive cars. They are more expensive. They're not as popular. They certainly have their detractors. And Cocker Spaniels, you could argue, have similar themes. And yet there's a cohort of people who just love them. Like, they just can't, even though they know they're maybe not the best thing for the job or the best for their wallet, they just can't get them out of their system. And now I say that as a Cocker Spaniel owner and a Land Rover owner.
Yeah. Well, I've owned every series of Land Rover except for Series 1, and that's my dream. My last Land Rover we only sold last year, called Dave. We'd had him for nearly 9 years. So yeah, I can kind of understand that, but I think the other thing is that you've got to tap into what these little dogs can do. That's the thing. So I have two kind of taglines, for want of a better word. One is practical gundog training. There's so much, and we'll talk about that. Hopefully, we'll talk about that at some point. And there's a lot of gimmicks and stuff go on. So my whole training ethos is about practical gundog training. I know you rough shoot. I like my rough shooting. When we talk about training, the way I train are things that I've learned working my dogs out in the field, not standing in a field, but working my dogs in the field. And the second thing is as well is they are versatile. I pick up with my dogs. I go beating with them, and picking your right breed lines is important for sure. That does make a difference, and also being able to give them the experience and train them to accommodate all different aspects. And look, the thing I always I'm start me on Cocker Spaniels. I'm going to ramble, I tell you. The thing to remember is, and I say this to all my clients, the shooting season runs from basically October to January. You might be lucky and get on some partridges in September. You might be super lucky and get on some grouse in August. But basically, for the vast majority of us, October to January. So what are they the rest of the time? They're our mates. They're our companions. They live in our house. Basically, become pets again, don't they? And that's where I think the cockers do really well. They can adapt to that dual purpose life, I think.
Do you think better than a Springer and better than a Lap?
I'll tell you what impresses me with Springers, and I've got Springers and Labradors as clients. So I don't want to upset everybody that might be watching this, listening to this, that have Labradors, but I find Labradors boring. I've photographed through my work. I've photographed the best dogs in the country over the years, and believe you me, seeing a dog run in a straight line for 500 yards is impressive, but it doesn't excite me. Going out with a Cocker Spaniel, thrashing through the bracken, you've got your gun in your hand, you're absolutely on tenterhooks waiting for that little dog to flush a pheasant, a rabbit, a woodcock, then hoping it stops and don't decide it's going to do one on you, because it will. I do have a theory on cockers, and that is they do wake up in the morning thinking how they can make their owners look an idiot. I'm sure they lay in their crates in the morning upside down, and they're thinking, right, what can I do today to make him look an idiot? And I will tell you a very little quick story that happened to me only on Friday. And so that excitement of a spaniel. Now, Springers, their power impresses me. You know, when you watch a Springer hit cover and its action, that's impressive. But for me, they don't just have that personality. They just don't have that personality. So yeah, I'm an avid fan of working dogs. Don't matter whether it's a terrier. I've done some videos and I've done a few articles on ratting with terriers. Fantastic to watch. But I wouldn't want a terrier. You know, no, I wouldn't. Simple as that, really. But it's the pure excitement, being on the seat of your pants, the edge of the seat, of just waiting for that dog to do what it was bred to do. So yeah, I don't think I can't ever see me. I mean, I'm 64 in February, so I'm getting to the Labrador stage now, and I can't quite run quite so fast after the little ones, but I can't ever see me going down that retriever route. But I do admire good gundog work.
Wonder if training a Cocker Spaniel for walked up or rough shooting is actually the hardest form of dog training within field sports. Because for say with a Labrador, if it's a peg dog, it needs to sit there all day basically. Retrieve maybe it's a draw, maybe 20 birds in total. And then the Springer, they're just a little less busy.
Yeah.
So when you're training a cocker for a walked up day, there's so many different things that it needs to do. It needs to hunt within a close pattern, which is difficult. Huh? I've seen several videos. I'm like, yeah, maybe not. So maybe. And then if he's flush something, then he needs to stop, which is the hard thing, which is just against all of the natural instinct. And then they need to retrieve them. So they need to do so much, and they're so small. And there's actually the hardest, and I think your thoughts, the hardest form of training is certainly even for a novice handler, is a cocker for a walked up day. Whereas a no-slip retriever is fairly straightforward.
Now, look, I've got a theory on this, and I have written articles about this. So, kind of on the similar line to what you're talking about, but you take a driven shoot day. So, on a driven shoot day with our dogs, we have our beating dogs, we have our picking up dogs, and we have our peg dogs. The vast majority of dogs that are going to be in the beating line are going to be spaniels, one way or another. Their financial value is the lowest.
Wait, did you write an article saying the true cost of a working spaniel? This one?
Yeah.
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 I remember that.
So for those that haven't read that article, a good working spaniel, and you'll see these adverts, fully trained. Well, what does fully trained mean? You're going to bring your dog to me, and you're going to say my dog's fully trained, and I'm going to look at it and think, oh my god, I might take my dog to somebody, and I'll say that's fully trained. They're going to go, so fully trained or even trained means different things to different people, 100%. So generally, you'll see adverts, won't you? Would make a good beating dog, would make a good rough shooting dog, £750, £1,000. So then we get to our picking up dogs. They're deemed higher. They're deemed more important than a beating dog. Pick your point up. A beating dog, if that runs amok in the beating line, at the flushing point, all hell's going to let loose. So your beating dog, in effect, has got to be better trained than your picking up dog, because your picking up dog, in some cases, you just leave it on the lead or drive. Let them off the lead. They'll all starburst off, providing they bring birds back. A picking up dog's going to pick one bird. It's going to earn its money. But they're deemed in the hierarchy slightly higher. And then we get to our peg dog. That, as you just rightly said, he's going to sit next to the gun all day long, pick 5 birds, sit there quietly. Most peg dogs, in truth, you're going to see are going to be tethered down anyway. But you go and buy a Labrador peg dog, that's going to cost you £6,000, £8,000. And yet the training, as you've rightly said, the training of a dog that's going to work in the beating line or a dog that you're going to want to shoot over, massively more important, massively harder. And they don't get the value. They don't get the value. And this is where the versatile dog comes into it. Most of us, mere mortals, want a dog that can do a bit of everything. Yeah, that can go beating, and it can do a bit of picking up, and it can be on a peg. I know you said sit on a peg with you then, but we're talking about Cocker Spaniels, aren't we? It could be in the vicinity of the peg with you. But I've got, that's what I aim for with my dogs. I aim for that versatile gun dog, a dog that I can go out. They're not going to be, they may not be the hardest hunting dogs, although I've got one Percy and that'll just go through a brick wall. So I want them to do everything. They may not do all brilliantly well, but I can take mine on the whole and not be embarrassed. Although that remains to be seen whether the dog decides it's going to do it on the day. And I'll give you I'll just give you a very quick example on that. I've got a little 8-year-old dog called Ted. Now Ted, we mentioned some of the magazines earlier on, which I wrote for about 20 years, but I did a diary on Ted ever since he was born. So he's quite a well-known dog. Now he's a dog in a million. Now, I'll never have another Cocker Spaniel like him. I've got videos of him sat when we're picking up, and he's got literally hundreds of partridges flying over the top of him. Doesn't move. Not the best hunter in the world, but if there's a bird in there, he'll get it out. A phenomenal retriever. I've got retrieves that I've had with him that unfortunately I've filmed, makes the hair stand on the back of my neck. We was out on Friday. We've just come to the edge of a hedgerow. I've got another gun just stood the other side. He's shot a bird. His dog ran in. Another dog ran in. I've looked down at Ted. He's looked at me and he ran in. Now I would have paid. I would have paid money. I would have paid good money, but that dog wouldn't have done that. And that was just one of those mornings that he decided to make me look an idiot. But that's you've got to laugh about that. And everybody else laughed about it because it was me and my dog. So, yeah.
It's interesting, certainly getting the dog out in the field. Because, say, my first day beating on a rink day, had a gun either side, and the dog was working, and then the dog was around other dogs that was working, and then a retrieve some regular dog and some pheasant. And I think at the end of that day, that dog had learned more in that single day than the previous 2 months of training, at least. Just being out and actually doing it. And it actually takes such a leap of faith when it's the dog's first season to actually take it out, because there's such a high chance that it could just go really wrong. But they somehow
See this little dog here?
little Twig
on the screen. That's Twig, right? So we bred her. We've only ever bred one litter, and so she's out of Percy, and she's 2.5. Tomorrow will be the first time I'm going to shoot over tomorrow at 2.5. So she's. What you've just said, social media is a wonderful thing. Here we are doing a podcast and we're talking about stuff. So a lot of people, they'll go on, watch YouTube videos, watch my videos, watch other people's videos, and you'll see dogs at like 7 months, 8 months out in the shooting field. And a client said to me yesterday, he's got a little 7-month-old, real fizzy little cocker. And he said to me, Nick, he said, I'm so far behind. I said, why are you far behind? He said, well, I was watching a video the other day and this chap had a 8-month-old cocker and it's retrieving cold game and it's doing this and doing that. I won't name who it is, but I watched a video last night that I follow this chap, very well-known trainer, quite high profile. He had a 8-month-old cocker out. It was one of his client's dogs. And at the beginning of the video, he said, oh, this little dog's 7.5, 8 months old, blah, 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 blah. Later in the video, he said, oh, this little dog's ready to go beating. Now, somebody's going to watch that and go, oh, I've got a little dog, it's 8 months old, I've got to take it beating. And then within no time at all, they're going to have a nightmare on their hands. I have 2 to 2.5 years in my head before I take my dogs out. Obviously, I'm trying to perhaps get mine to a more consistent standard. I can't say a better standard, but a consistent standard, I think I would say. There's so there's a saying that the best way to ruin a gun dog is to take it shooting, and it's so true. It's so true. But I think that transition of going from training into the shooting field is really, really critical. You might get away with it the first few times. You might get away with it the first season, but next year you're going to have a dog totally out of control. And we've all seen it on so many shoots over and over again. So yeah, that should be done very carefully and in no rush.
Why do people say that when they part train, not fully trained, take them out beating? Because taking your dog out beating on a driven day, it's like obviously so much can go wrong, but it's so much for a little young dog to comprehend with birds everywhere. Whereas on even like a rough day, or even if you're just training like walking behind them, they're searching for the bird. They might, or the game every 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Whereas on a driven day, they're just surrounded. Surely it's quite counterintuitive to take your dog on a driven day when it's not even fully trained.
The one thing I've tried to do it for years, and I've done it this year. So some of my clients that will come, they've never been involved in shooting at all, and I call them shoot day virgins. So they've never had any involvement in shooting at all, and some of them almost, I wouldn't say they're antis, but they have no idea. So what I do, I did it last Friday. The chap has got a little sprocker, never been shooting them before. So I buy little walked up days. We're looking for 20 birds thereabouts. They're my kind of days. But what I've done over the last 3 years is clients whose dogs are just about ready to go, they come along. So sometimes I might come along without a dog, just to watch what goes on. And then when their dogs are ready, in fact, tomorrow we're out on a local estate, and I've got 3 people who've never been on a shoot before, but they're little dogs. When I say they're ready, we never know whether they're ready.
There's only one way to find out.
There is, you're right. But equally, it has to be done, and you're quite right, Rob, you said there, it has to be done in a controlled manner, because the mental stimulation is totally different from training in a field. So you need to control that, and also we've got to be careful we don't have this attitude that, oh yeah, I'll keep going. Yeah, you might only have to work your dog for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, put it away. Now listen, I'm telling you all of this, and I don't know whether you saw the video I made a few weeks ago. We were up in Newmarket on the sugar beet. I was running. Did you see it? Yeah. Well, talk about do what I say, don't do what I do. That was a situation with Twig there that was, it had the worst possible scenario, the best possible outcome. And again, for people that don't know, I was working with some sugar beet. She flushed a pheasant off the end of her nose, literally off the end of her nose. And all her training's done, probably bar not being totally steady to game. I managed to stop her. I shouted to the gun, shoot it. Of course, they shot it and injured it. It got pricked, but it dropped a long way back. We didn't have a dog that end. Fun enough, the keeper was towards that end. So, of course, my immediate thing is we need to get that bird. And I sent her. And then my heart sunk and I just wanted to dig a big hole because I'd done everything wrong. She hit the mark lovely. She's a cracking little marking dog. And she disappeared over the brow of the hill. Well, the video, obviously I edited the video. She'd gone for nearly 3 minutes, which, you know, that's a long time. It really is. She come back over the hill. She had a live cockbird in her mouth, delivered it to hand. Well, yeah, that's making the hair stand up on the back of my neck. You know, that little dog, that was, if a client had said to me, I've sent my dog for a cockbird and it was a runner, I'm thinking, you idiot. Why did you do that? But that was a moment that I'll always remember. But now I've got to go back and control her again, like. But it was a good lesson. The bird came back pristine. I'd love to have seen how she managed it the other side. Did she take a line of it? Was it sat still? It was pretty lively, so I'm suspecting it took a line. So it was a good piece of education for her. But yeah, there's a classic. There's me telling people what to do, and then I'm going to do exactly the opposite. But that is an aspect of everything I do, or try to do, that's important. If you've ever watched my videos, if you've read any of the articles, you'll realise I will show things going wrong. Because social media, again, is the worst thing. You've got these film star people, film star dogs, I call them as such, that everything's perfect. You never see anything go wrong because they don't want to show those things going wrong because it's not good for them. I actually have a totally opposite view on that. We live in a real world, and people get disheartened if they see everything go right all the time. And I watch some videos of spaniels hunting, and they're absolutely flying. And I look at that and I think to myself, none of my dogs have ever gone like that. And then I look at it a bit more from a technical point of view, they've speeded the film up. Or the other thing is, if you keep your camera still, like my head cam, I tend to keep it fairly still. So the dog is moving within the frame. You start moving your camera like that, and it makes everything look faster. So I'm not saying people are doing it on purpose, but you can't always believe what you see.
Interesting on that note, I was sort of August, September time. I was watching a lot of training videos. So it was my dog's first season, and I was seeing these dogs fly, and I'm just like, wow, these are rockets. Like, I have, a Labrador here doing nothing, even though it's Cocker Spaniel. And then I went and watched a couple of field trials because they were hosted where I live. And I'm looking at these field trial dogs, best in the country, and they're not going half as fast as the ones that I've seen online. Okay. And I thought, wait a second, something's up here. And then I realized that, social media, and people will put out the best 10 seconds or they'll speed it up. And there's actually these proper dogs working who are field trial. It was a novice and then there was an open. And I was just like, wow, okay, it's completely distorted.
And the other thing is, fun enough, I was thinking about it this morning because I was thinking about things to talk about with you. And you'll see videos of people sending a Labrador 500 yards, go straight down, and you think, I've been shooting for 30 years. I've never seen anybody send a Labrador 500 yards. You know, I saw I saw another video, and I've spoken to some clients about this. This chap's got a Springer Spaniel, and he sends it out. It jumps a fence, goes along, jumps another fence. It's going like 200 yards, jumping fences. And then coming back to my practical Gundog training, you wouldn't do that. You just wouldn't do it. So people look at, and I say that because that's been brought up as an example in conversation. And I say to people, I said, look, you would not send your dog over 2 fences like that, because you don't know what's the other side of that fence. You're going to go up to there, you're going to lift your dog over, especially a Cocker Spaniel. I actually teach my dogs to go under rather than over. We've got a lot of barbed wire around here, so it's a safer option. Mine will jump. I mean, Percy jumps vertically. He'll jump up to my head, and he'll jump anything. But I prefer not to. I don't specifically teach mine to jump, but that it's interesting that you picked up on that as well. You know, and it can be disheartening. It really can be disheartening, and that's why, you know, I show my mistakes. My biggest criticism on my films are you're a lousy shot, you're a crap shot, you can't shoot. You should, and a couple of times I don't normally go back at that, because how can you? But I do make the point when you go back to our rough shooting. You know, you're walking on rough ground. Anybody that's walked on sugar beet or fodder turnips, nightmare. Tomorrow we're walking in woodland, fallen trees, stumps, mud. So I'm working my dog. I'm watching out where my fellow guns are. I'm carrying a gun. I'm videoing at the same time as well. So I've got all this going on. And then when my dog flushes something, before I even think about pulling the trigger, I've got to make sure the dog's shot and it's a safe shot. And then I'm going to shoot it. And then I'm going to send my dog. And then I'm going to put it's a package, isn't it? It's a package. And the other thing I say to people is, well, I picked up for years, and I stopped picking up 3 years ago because I got disheartened with having to keep dispatching live game for people that actually have probably never done it. You know, they shot stuff, but had they ever got a bird in their hand and had to dispatch it? And also they'd shoot and walk off their pegs. I know that's our job, don't get me wrong, I understand that fully. That's all part of the shooting world. But then I flick back to what we do, and you know, you included in this. We train our dogs. We spend a lot of time, money, effort, blood, sweat, tears, all those things. So we train our dog. We take it out. It works for us. We shoot that bird. Our dog that we've trained, it's our responsibility then to get that dog out to make that retrieve. If it's dead or alive, it doesn't matter. And then when they bring it back, because we don't shoot vast numbers, we take it home and we eat what we've got. It's our responsibility. And that I think in a way is kind of missing sometimes from the shooting world. I do. Sorry, I really am getting my soapbox now. But I it's a very special thing to train a dog and go and shoot its first bit of game over it. It's something you always remember. It may happen tomorrow with Madam over there, it may not. If it's not today, it might be another day. I'd like to try and get something shot over this season. But I can remember every single head of game that I've ever shot over my dogs, the first ones. And I'm lucky because 9 times out of 10 I've filmed it anyway. Right. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, the whole rough shooting, walked up shooting, because I often feel sad in a way describing it as shooting, because it's so much more than that. I think it's more akin to what the Americans would describe hunting. Do you know, and because you're hunting as man and dog in search of quarry.
Yeah.
And it's so removed from standing on a peg for a collective hour in a day and firing at birds that are driven towards you. And I think it's so much more special when you get the bird at the end of the day, or the bird when it comes back to you.
I'm just going to try and find something, Joe. Hold on a minute. I think it's here. But I just want to read you, if I can find it. There's a chap called Robert Rourke. It's an American author, and he. I'm picking up on what you've just said, and this quote, and I've used the quote in the back of the book. I think it just epitomises exactly what you just said. And it says, hunting is watching your dog work and taking it easy and shooting just enough and walking slow and enjoying the day. I think that says it all. I think that's called that's from a book called The Old Man and the Boy, and it's basically about a grandfather taking his grandson out and teaching him to hunt. That's how I see it. You know, that I went out last Friday with a little group, and I never shot a bird. I shot 2 cartridges all day. I come home and I made some good memories. And the memory I made was, funny enough, was Ted running in on the bird. But it doesn't matter, you know. And our days are relatively cheap, what we pay. So if I go out and pay like 150 quid, £100, whatever, doesn't matter if I shoot anything or not. It doesn't matter. If I'm paying £600, £700, £800, £1,000, £2,000, then it matters. So I think rough shooting, it's a shame you use the word rough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think that demeans it in itself, because the word rough, I think, it implies that, you know, the dogs are not going to be very good, your shooting's not going to be very good, everything's rough. You know,
it's like coarse fishing. It's like the connotation of the word coarse.
yeah, it's a good point. I think shooting will go more and more that way. I do. I think we'll go back. I mean, I shoot with a little side-by-side, a little 20-ball side-by-side. I paid 400 quid for it. The only reason I have a gun, and there's one reason, and that's to get a retrieve for my dog. That's it. I have no interest in guns at all, other than they fire something out the end of them to get a retrieve for my dog. I would get as much pleasure, and you mentioned it earlier on. I would and do get as much pleasure working my dogs for somebody else to shoot. That's why we spend so many hours doing what we do, training these dogs. Yeah.
It's interesting as well, because I feel as though I get probably about 85% of the enjoyment that I get on a rough day, actually just with the dummy launcher and the dog in the training field.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not the same, obviously, and it is better, the real thing. But I could do that all summer long as well. So it really makes it 12 months of the year round.
And I think if you use, going back to training, if you can take your experiences, like for example, so I've learned through experience that quite often, if you're hunting a hedgerow, a bird will get up, it will come down your side of the hedgerow, and it will flick back over the other side. So 9 times out of 10, if you're going to shoot it, you're going to shoot it as it's going up and over the top of the hedgerow. Bang. So it lands the other side of the hedgerow. So you've got your little spaniel, and you try and get it to go through that hedge, to get to the other side out of that field. Now, the chances are, if you haven't trained for that scenario, that dog's just going to want to hunt that hedge all the time. And then you're going to have to find a gap to get through, to take your dog through. Well, I've learned that over the years, because it's happened to me over and over again. So I train for that. I train those scenarios where I'm putting dummies the other side of hedges. I'm teaching my dogs, go back, get through the hedge, go the other side. Your retrieves I'm not always going to be finding on the hedge. Going back to like duck shooting. So you sneak up on a little pond, a couple of teal get up, bang, you shoot one. Most people, when they're doing water training, will throw dummies into the middle of the water. So the dog goes out, picks its dummy from the middle of the water, so it's conditioned that when you send it into water, you'll see them. They're looking around for it. But that seal you've just shot, it's not dead, but it's managed to make to the bank, and it's hidden up into some reeds. Train for it. Put your dummies in the reeds. Put your dummies the other side of the river, or the stream, or the pond. So when you gain that experience from shooting over your dogs, you can then apply that into your training. And then you come to what we said at the beginning, you get this versatile gun dog. I'm confident with my dogs in any scenario. I can get them out to do a retrieve because I train for it over and over again. So when you go out with your dummy launcher or you go out to your training field, just don't keep doing the same old things all the time. Just think about what you might come across in the shooting field and train for that. And that, sorry, again, to harp on, that's where it comes back to practical Gundog training.
Which is a wonderful segue because
I've done this before somehow, haven't you?
you have a book coming out in springtime called Practical Gundog Training.
Yeah.
The world of Gundog training, there are a lot of weapons in which you can arm yourself to train a dog. So there's a lot of social media, there's a lot of books already written. Why did you feel as though you should write your take on how to train a dog?
So my Bible, and I would be very surprised if you've not got this book, Training Spaniels by Joe Irvin. And that's the kind of the Spaniel Bible, but it was written in 1968. And a lot of things then, it's like quartering. Here you get little diagrams, left, right, left, right, left, right. Well, most of our dogs don't do that. And you look at it, and it looks easy because you just zigzag, and the dog's going to get the zigzag. So it's quite it's almost it's 1968. It's old fashioned. Things move on, and there's no pictures. So I'd written for the Sporting Press for 20 odd years, and a year ago in September, there was another takeover, which has been up freelance. And I've written about ferrets, and I've written about gamekeepers, and obviously my dogs and stuff. So after this last takeover, I thought, I've had enough now. So I'd had an itch, and it was itching and itching and itching. I thought I've got to scratch this itch, and that was to write a Gundog training book. So I have two mentors. I think all of us have people that we look up to for different. I'm sure in your previous career you had people that you looked up to. So I've got two, and they couldn't be more different. I've got a chap called John Rees. He lives in Carmarthen, Bilbrook, Cockers. John, about the same age as me, early 60s. He's a pure cocker man. Absolutely is devoted to the breed. Did a lot of training for some very well-known people, but more recently just got back into trialing himself. Made up champion last year, qualified for the championships. So that's John over in Carmarthenshire. Couldn't be further than me. Couldn't be further away. So my other mentor is a young lady called Fran Ardley of Tarncrag Gundogs. Now Fran's up in Cumbria. I've known Fran for about 6-7 years now. Brilliant trainer, absolutely brilliant. Not only with her dogs, but with people as well. Fran's, I don't know what she's 30, early 30s. Just made up her second champion, qualified for the championships again this year. That's 4 years with 3 different dogs. So she knows her stuff, but different to John. So they're my mentors. Fran, I'd been writing articles for her in the Sporting Gun for a number of years. So when I decided to stop and all this, I'd spoke to her. I said, look, I think there's a gap in the market for a Gundog training book, which is going to take, as I've just said, about practical scenarios. So not pure training, if you like, but taking a book that deals with scenarios that you're going to come across in a shooting field. Anyway, that was the beginning. So we've some of the techniques are Fran's, some of the techniques are mine. I've written it. We've done all the pictures. Done a lot of stuff on placeboard. I'm an actual advocate for placeboard training. I think it's a really useful tool, especially for Cocker Spaniels. So it's about 200. It's coming out at about 260 odd pages. I've done all the photography for it, so it was a task. Make no bones about it. We said the final proofs went off just last week, and I'm really pleased. I'm pleased the way it's looking. I think I think there's a slight gap in them. There's no gimmicks. That's the thing. I think you mentioned again there about there's lots of things to help people to train their gun dogs. But to me, some of them are gimmicks. There's just too much. It's like I'm a trainer, so I've got to come up with something different. Oh no, you don't have to. So there's no gimmicks in this. It's just practical ideas to train your dogs. And the other thing I've done that's quite important as well, I'm lucky now. I've got a training field in the village where I live, and I've got a wood just up the road. But I've only had that in the last 3 years. All my other training has been done on the playing field. So what we try to do as well is not assume people have all these facilities, because not everybody does, and then you get disheartened. Like you mentioned earlier on, where you live, you've got pheasants, and you sound like you've got some good ground. In fact, I'm going to pop in the car when we finish, and I'm on my way up there. but but not everybody has that. So in fact, most people won't have that. So therefore, you've got to make do with what you've got. It might just be a scrubby little corner in a playing field. If that's what you've got, then use what you've got, not what you want, what you hope for. So that's the aim of the book, really. I've got another idea bubbling away in my head to do another one. I've done 5 books before, photography books. So this is my first kind of training orientated book. Yeah, I hope it's successful. I hope more importantly, it gives people some enthusiasm and perhaps just helps them to get their dogs better. I think that'd be nice if that happened. It's nice when we were having a bit of a preamble, you mentioned about watching the films, and that made you get your first cocker.
Do you want to know what sealed it off? You put a video, and it's on your channel, but I don't think it was actually you. It was titled something like "Rough Shooting Over a Field Trial Winning Cocker Spaniel."
Yes.
And it's a little golden Cocker Spaniel.
That's mum.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because it maybe like 2013. I remember watching it while I was a 13-year-old. And because when I was beating every Saturday. And I just saw that little dog just do its thing, and I thought, wow, that's for me. And then 10 years it took before I could get one, just with circumstances and racing, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's a lovely thing. I started videoing my days, and I did some like training. Percy's progress. I did Percy from when he was 14 weeks old right through to but I'm obviously still filming him now. But basically, his training progress. And when I started it, it was just for me. It was just. And what's lovely now, and it is quite sad, sometimes I'll just sit there in an evening if there's nothing on television. I don't want to watch EastEnders again or something. And I'll just go back through the videos. And I've got videos of Sweep. I've got videos of Harry. They've gone now. But I can remember those days. I can remember that. I can remember that bird. And then the additional bonus is that people now seem to enjoy it. I work at the game fair on a stand. I help a chap out, and I've done it for the last 3 years, and that's my window now. So, and the amount of people that come up and say, "I love watching your videos. They're really great. I can't wait to do." That was never the plan, never. But it's been a lovely result, I suppose, of doing the videos. We've just gone over. I just looked last week. I think we're about 14,300 subscribers and 4.3 million views, which I know in the big scheme of things of YouTube, I don't get a little plaque to put on my wall or anything yet. It's nice. It is nice. And it's more of a record of my dogs. That's what it's about. Yeah, I'm quite passionate about it, Joe. I am passionate about it. Yeah.
Is there a reason why you have mostly had dogs rather than bitches? Obviously, you've got a little twig, but then you spayed her, so you're not looking to have a litter. Why is that?
Right. So we've got dogs and bitches. I always had bitches, and then Harry. I'd wanted a dog out of this particular litter, and anyway, cut long story short, there was only one there, and he was a black dog. We'd never had a dog before, and so I had a dog. And then we got Ted and Percy. We bought a dog in, a little bitch called Dot, who we put Percy to Dot, and they gave us Twig. So I think dogs are slightly less complicated than bitches, in truth. I think bitches probably a bit more straightforward than dogs. But to be honest, either or either. I wouldn't say it's like cockers, colours. Now there's 18 colour variations of Cocker Spaniels. And people say, oh, our golden one's more easier to train than black ones. No, they're dogs. They're all the same. I've got a blue roan, Percy's blue roan. Now, blue roan isn't necessarily a very popular breed, like a colour. Sorry, I personally wouldn't have a liver one. That's just my choice. Twig's orange and white, as is her mum. Don't see many of them, but then it's a bit like driving a Mini. All of a sudden, you see Minis everywhere. Or driving a Land Rover, all of a sudden you see Land Rovers. But you start seeing more of these little this colours. So, if you've got more than where it comes down to it, in truth, we have a few issues with Ted and Percy. They're both entire males, both been used at stud quite a bit. So they're not the best of buddies, to say the least. So we have to manage that indoors. I think if you're having more than one dog, then if you've got one and then you're going to get another one, then there should be a bit more of a consideration. If you've got a bitch and you're going to get another one, probably better to get a dog. But obviously, then you've got to deal with one that needs to be neutered. We've always had bitches, and I mean, bitches can have bust ups, but then they're not like people, aren't they? So they're gonna have their good days and their bad days. But definitely when you get more than one, I mean, 5. We never wanted 5 dogs. It happens. My problem is I go. I don't know why I'm laughing. I'm just hoping my missus is not listening at the end of the door here. So I think every kind of 2 years. So if you take my cycle is 2.5 years before I introduce with shooting field. So I'm looking at kind of 3 years old, 4 years old. Then I'm starting to look for my next one. And that's kind of how it's happened, and that's why it's happened. I mean, Fuss, bless him, touch wood. We've always had our dogs who've gone for quite a good age. I mean, Fuss is 14.5. So that's a lot of 2 years, isn't it? But I'll tell you the sad thing, Joe, is and you've got a long way to go yet, I can tell, hopefully. I think I've probably got one more dog in me. I think one more. We ended up getting Dot spayed and we got Twig spayed, basically because of the boys. You know, having them entire, having bitches in season just wasn't going to work. I wish, in a way, because she's such a lovely little thing, I wish we hadn't have had her spayed. Fortunately, a client of mine has got her sister and her brother. Fun enough, she didn't buy 2 together. It just so happened that's how it's ended up. So there might be an option there. My dream was to put Ted to Twig. That would have been my dream. Ted was very poorly about 3 years ago. We nearly lost him, and so not that we had to, but we decided not to use him at stud anymore. So that kind of put an end to that. And who knows? I may not get another one. You know, I get my training kick now out of my clients, because I do love my training. I do. Yeah, I'm probably a better trainer of people than I am of dogs. That's probably where I would sit with that.
It's interesting, the dog trainer thing. I was speaking to a vet recently, and she's a vet, and her sister is a doctor. They were discussing who has the harder job, and the vet won it because the vet says she has to deal with 2 types of clients. She has to deal with the animals, but then also the people as well.
Yes.
Whereas the doctor only has the people.
I think, and again, I know some very, very good dog trainers, but could they teach somebody to train their dogs? No. And I always find it quite amusing when people send their dogs off to be trained. I've got clients that I can take their dog and I can go off and that dog will work for me and do everything. Well, I can think of any number of them, but they'll do their stuff for me. Give them back to the client, and they won't do nothing. They're all over the place. And the reason that is I think the dogs, they're not daft animals. They're optimists. They're opportunists. So your dog lives with you. My dog's with him. They know all the buttons they can press. They know exactly. They don't know what you're going to do before you even know what you're going to do. But when they come to a trainer, that trainer, like my rules are laid down right from the beginning. Not in terms of firmness, but just in terms of fun. Yeah, I've got but I do occasional group days, and we've got remote dummy launches and stuff. So I might do a simulated picking up day or something like that. And we did one a few months ago, and one of my clients took a picture down the ride at the Wood. And this particular little black and white spaniel is quite testing, but she'll come and work for me better than her client. So I took this little dog Bramble, and I'd sent her down for a retrieve right across in front of everybody. And somebody took a picture of it, and it was so funny because all the handlers were watching the dog, all the dogs were looking at me, and it was quite a poignant thing. And I'm sure there's plenty of other trainers that would tell you the same thing. Yeah, they're real cute little things. These dogs, they will look for every opportunity, and they get the measure of their owners. So as trainers, I think we have to look at what the owner's doing. Sometimes it can be the slightest little bit of body language that makes the dog react in a different way. And timing. A lot of novice trainers don't have good timing. Retrieving is a classic example. Dog will come back with a retrieve. The handler gets anxious, starts grabbing at the dog starts circling, and you've created a problem. You're smiling. Do you have that issue?
I had that issue that I had to rectify. It's not parading around me. I'm like, no.
There's I haven't mentioned him yet. I'm not going to mention him by name, but there's somebody we both know that comes for training, and because I spoke to him the other day about it, and he has exactly that problem. Now that little dog of his that will come straight to me, sit in front of me, and deliver every single time. He does it, and it parades around like anything. and it's I had another client. Now here's an interesting little thing. This is what's kind of ticking my head around with another book, problem solving. This chap, in his job, quite high up in his job, got a hugely responsible job. Got a little dog, little cocker. That little dog would not bring a dummy back to him. Refused. That'd stop 10 foot in front of him, drop it, run around. Wouldn't do it. So I took the dog for a while, threw it up, bang, straight in front of me, took it every single time. Now that's really frustrating for the owner. But the point I make is that dog could do it. So the missing thing was, what was the owner doing? Anyway, tell the story short, what we ended up doing, when the dog was coming back, I made him turn around. So he turned his back to the dog. The dog came round, sat in front of him every single time. And I'm not exaggerating, Joe. This is the honest to God truth. Anyway, we did that. Bomb. Came round, sat in front of him every time. So then the handler then was getting his confidence up. So bit by bit, we turned him around, to the point now where he throws that retrieve out, that dog comes straight back and sits in front of him. The issue was the anxiety from the handler was being transmitted to the dog. As soon as he turned round and couldn't see the dog come back, it went. And that's what, to me, the dog training is about. It's not always having to rectify what's going on with the dog. It's being able to recognise and try and work out what's going on with the owner and the combination with the dog. And I'm guilty of that as well. I mean, when I go and see John or Fran, they pull me to pieces because I get into my little habits. I do my little things, and I don't it's something you need to be rectified with it. I'm sure you'd have been the same in your previous sport. You think you're doing something really well, and someone says, "No, if you just push a bit harder with your right leg, you won't keep going around left-hand circles or whatever it might be." I don't know, but you know what I mean? Yeah, it's and that gives you a huge amount of satisfaction because that person then, sorry, I was just saying, that person then has a better relationship with that little dog. At the end of the day,
it's really interesting. You said previous slide as a cyclist. So I actually find it super helpful when it comes to training with my dog because you have to be so critical of your own performance and then build a little training plan. Just because I've always had training plans for me, so brings a little one. And it's funny to stop the parading. What I did is very similar. When she started to come back to me with a retrieve, I would turn my back and face the other way, and then that created a little game for her because suddenly then she had to do the extra little bit, and then she just came and sat. But it's just that constant, like a 7-day, and she gets 2 days off, and the little bits. But you have to be so self-critical, and it's so easy to kid yourself thinking, "Oh,
how often do you see anybody on social media give you little tips like that?"
never."
No. If you look at Percy's progress, I had issues with Percy's retrieval, and I did a whole little series on that about how to rectify that issue. But no, that's the problem. That is the problem. You only ever see perfection, and as novice people, we're constantly learning. As you just said earlier on in this interview, dogs are all different. Everyone will do a different thing, so we're constantly learning. It's constantly evolving. And sometimes you videoing. Now, video yourself. If you're a novice trainer, we've all got our phones. Get a cheap tripod and a phone holder and video yourself doing your training and then watch it back. I had a chap come yesterday, little dog, a 6-month-old cocker, pulling his arm off on the lead, which is a common problem. I took the dog, did some heel work up the field, perfect. I got his wife comes, I said, right, now video this chap, videoed, now video me. So now play the 2 videos back and look at the lead. The chap is constantly keeping the lead tight. So the dog's constantly pulling against it. Whereas I had the lead really loose, it had nothing to pull against. But just a subtle little thing like that. But I said, now go, because you videoed it, you'll be able to go back and make that comparison. Again, it's not about, oh, look, I can make a dog walk the hill, or look, I can get... It's not about that. It's just showing them that just from changing that very subtle little bit of body language, positive mindset, because I'm absolutely convinced these dogs pick up on that. When I get Percy out, anybody watches me can see my... I was going to say anxiety, but my demeanour changes. Because I know I've got a dog on the end of that lead then that he's absolutely just going to... On his day, he's a very special dog. But my God, he's like driving a sports car. You know you're going to crash and burn at any time, but what a ride. Yeah, it's... they're great little things. Yeah, great little dogs. And I wouldn't be without them. No. So you need to get down to this part of the country and come out for a day with us. That's what you need to do. Yeah.
Done. Let's do it. I don't. Just one last question, Nick. Yeah. From a personal point of view, so I have one looking to get a second. How many days do you do a year? How many dogs do you think that you need? So I'll probably next season I'll be out twice a week, pretty much every week, bar like a holiday here or there, and I'll have 2.
Yeah.
Most of it will be either beaten on a rough day or being on a rough day.
Yeah.
What would your advice be there?
So, if you've got 2, that's ideal. So, for a couple of reasons. One, if you get a dog injured, you've still got a dog, obviously. But more importantly, what I'll do with mine now, I've got various dogs. So, like Ted, if I'm picking up, no matter how big the day is, he's my default dog for that. Tomorrow when we're out, I'll run Percy in the morning, and then I'm going to run Twig tomorrow. But ordinarily, I'd run Ted in the afternoon, or do one. So basically, you'll keep a fresh dog. Again, I'm sure you know from your your previous life again. When you start to get fatigued, your reflexes and everything just diminish slightly. Same with the dogs. Now, when they get tired, they're not going to be as sharp on the whistle. They're not going to hunt as hard. Their retrieving will get sloppy. So, if you've got a dog that you can swap over, then that's always a good option. So, two's a good option for sure. You'll always favour one. You always will, and that's a fact. And the other advantage of having two, you don't have to rush the second one on. So if you get a youngster, don't be having in your head, "Oh, I'm going to use it next season," because you can just take a little bit slower time with it and get it perhaps better than your first one. So that's quite important as well, and just ease it in gently. Like Twig, I may not do any more than if I did an hour with her yesterday. She might be on the lead for half an hour of that. It's just easing them. They're going to last you a long time with a bit of luck. I mean, Harry went. I think I finished picking up with him at 12 years old. So I had 10 really good years with him, and you'd hope that that's where you're looking. So don't rush it in the early stages, and pick your lines as well. We all rush for these field trial champion. We want red on the pedigrees. They're highly bred, highly strung dogs that not everybody can handle. So that's the other thing. I think just pick your lines really carefully. I'm very particular with mine. I've probably got 2, perhaps 3 lines that I want to use. And obviously now we did have our own, but we haven't anymore.
How many did you manage to get out in a season?
Oh, blimey. So what have we done so far? I think we would have been 12 or 13 walked up days this year. I've kind of changed things. I'm not doing so much beating this year. I'd have done 6 or 7 picking up days. I'm quite lucky in a way, because what I try and do, I try and get up to Cumbria in the spring and late autumn. I get out on the rabbits, and that I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but shooting rabbits over Cocker Spaniels is shooting rabbits over dogs, full stop, spaniels. Wow, that to me, forget all your bird shooting, that is the pinnacle, for so many reasons. The way the dogs work, their steadiness, they have to be thorough because the rabbits are set up tight, and then you've got the whole training element of when they flush that rabbit, you've got to make sure it's a safe shot. Yeah, it's and of course you have some fantastic scenery. Now we don't get it down here, so I've been lucky enough to come up to Scotland shooting rabbits and Cumbria and North Yorkshire, and if somebody said to me, right, you got to pick one thing you can shoot with your dogs and everything else goes by the by, rabbit shooting would be very close. And then obviously that would have to be woodcock, because that's what those little dogs were bred to do. And I know that's a bit controversial with woodcock thing, but again, as a quarry, that is really testing, to find, and then they're really, really difficult retrieves. We may see a few tomorrow where we go. There's a few about, but I'll only shoot them if I get a flush off the end of the dog. Yeah, that's quite exciting.
Well, Nick, I want to thank you for all you've done for fieldsports and gundogs. It's inspired me. Well, I'm sure it's inspired many, many others. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to the show.
Been my pleasure, Joe. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you.